Now, I know that Game Week 30 isn't even over yet, but there is already plenty to talk about. So here are players to buy and avoid for Game Week 31. Now, I'm conscious he hasn't actually played yet in Game Week 30, but I think the first player to talk about in the context of Game Week 31 is Mo Salah. He is by far and away, in my opinion, the best captain. He's got Sheffield United, and he's back fit, good to start. He's the top player over the next 5 weeks, according to DraftHound, for expected points. Obviously, he's got the double game week in there in 34 as well against Fulham and Everton. So for me, he's the outstanding captain in that game week. And if for some miracle you have your triple captain left in for game week 34, I'd recommend using it that week. I think he could do really well. He's just the best player in FPL history, right? He's got the highest scoring season for points in terms of a single player in FPL history. And he's one of very few players in the league. I think it's just him and Haaland now that have over 1 expected returns per 90, which is a stat I really like to look at when picking an FPL asset. Yeah, best captain for 31. And to be honest, he could well be the best captain for 32 and 33 as well. With Man United, you'd expect them to concede to Liverpool in that one. And then Crystal Palace after that, you'd back Salah to score in that one as well. As obviously, he's a really good option. And I think Game Week 31, if you don't have him already, is prime time to hop on. Next up, I just wanted to talk about Solanke. For those that are looking to wildcard potentially in Game Week 31, have him in their teams currently and might be thinking about getting rid of him potentially, I wouldn't do it. I really like Solanke. He's nailed for 90 minutes, takes the penalties for Bournemouth. He was obviously injured before the international break, although playing through it. He definitely had some kind of knee injury that he picked up in the Tottenham game, I believe, a fair few game weeks ago now. He's had a couple of weeks off, and the game he's just played in Game Week 30, he looked to be back to his best against Everton. Obviously, scored a goal as well. He's a set and forget option, right? And when you look at those fixtures over the next 5 weeks, I personally wouldn't have an issue starting him against any of those teams. Could equally score against Crystal Palace as well as he could against Man United. And then he's got a double game week in 34. I just absolutely love players that are nailed on to start for their team, rarely get injured to the point where they don't play 90 minutes and take the penalties. It just means they have constant routes to points. And yeah, Solanke definitely ticks all of those boxes. I think he's a great option, regardless if you're on your wild card or not. And another one, Darwin Núñez. Now, some managers might be put off by the sheer fixture congestion that Liverpool have in coming game weeks. You know, there's a very good chance that he plays in Game Week 30 and then he could well get benched in Game Week 31, right? I don't deny that. But I think he's proven this season that even if he doesn't start games, he can score or get assists, even in games that he doesn't start, right? I think in 3 or 4, maybe even 5 games this season where he hasn't started but been on the bench, he's come off and got an attacking return, and that could quite easily happen against Sheffield United, right? His numbers this season are insane. 0.99 expected returns per 90, 20 attacking returns from 17 starts, from only 13.6, he scored only 10 goals from 13.6 XG. And one of the things I've definitely recognised in him is that he really seems to have found the target and really hit that goal scoring form. Yeah, I think he's a great asset, and I'd be scared not to have him for this run-in. You look at those fixtures, and there isn't one game there where you doubt his ability to score. A double in 34, much obviously like Salah does against Fulham and Everton. Sheffield United he could score against, Man United he could score against, Crystal Palace he could score against. That double is looking prime for him. Then he could obviously score against West Ham as well. He just looks to be a really nice asset. One thing I would say, I'd imagine a lot of players probably have Ollie Watkins in their team at the moment. You might be able to sell him for 9 million or thereabouts, right? Darwin Núñez is 1.5 million cheaper than Ollie Watkins now. And I know that Watkins is, probably still the top scoring player in the game. But you've got to think in terms of the future, not what has happened in the past in FPL. And I think when you compare Núñez and Watkins together with the fixtures they've got coming up, particularly with a double for Darwin, I think Darwin's the better asset going forward. So yeah, he's definitely an option for me. If I was on my wild card, I'd definitely be looking at picking him. Right, we do have a couple of 4.5 million-ish strikers. I'm pretty sure Muniz on the left is now 4.6, Semenyo still sits at 4.5, and I just wanted to address that we've got 2 bargain basement strikers in the game at the moment. Muniz obviously scored against Sheffield United, could have had a couple of goals in that game. Semenyo did blank in Game Week 30, but he's definitely not had a bad season, right? So I just thought I'd put them together, compare their stats and their fixtures coming up to try and help you decide who you might want. My justification for picking them basically is if you want to go 5 in midfield, or you're really struggling for budget with the team that you're putting together at the moment, I think having a 4.5 million striker could be really helpful for you. And let's be honest, right? They've both been playing well enough where even though you probably bench them most weeks, maybe not, you know, you wouldn't be worried about starting them every week. You know, the way that the league is going at the moment with the sheer amount of goals that are being scored, you know, conceivably these players could score against any opposition. So I just thought I'd put down their stats. Muniz, he's started 11 games, 9 attacking returns now, with 5.6 XG in terms of goals, 0.56 expected returns per 90. I'd definitely say with Muniz, it is a purple patch that he's going through. Don't think he's seen goal scoring form like this ever in his career, but who cares, right? If it's a purple patch, he's currently in it, so you might as well pick him. And I do think he's a good player. I do think the level of returns that he's getting might well drop off, but I definitely don't think they're going to resort to 0, right? I think he's going to continue to play for Fulham, seems to be nailed on for them. And I'd also question, I'm pretty sure Willian is currently what is listed as the designated pen taker for Fulham. But given how well Muniz has been playing and how many goals he's been scoring, I definitely think I'd ask the question, could he now be the penalty taker for Fulham? I think that's a genuine possibility. So a 4.5 million striker with the level of form he's in, the attacking returns he's got, and I think potential to be the penalty taker for Fulham. I mean, he's a really good option, isn't he? Semenyo, I'd probably say he's not quite as good as Muniz, but of course he does have a double game week in 34. So I'd say over the next 5 fixtures, there's not a whole lot to separate them. As you can see there, Muniz on the stats wise completely trouts Semenyo in my opinion, absolutely trounces him. But the double in 34 would make me, you know, definitely make Semenyo a stronger consideration. So ultimately, I don't think there's a whole lot to split them. What I do think you would need to decide to split them is whether you're free hitting in 34 or not, right? If you're using your free hit in 34, I'd go for Muniz. If you're not, I think Semenyo is more of an option. But I can't not mention these two players, right? I think when we've got 2 4.5 million strikers that are playing every week and scoring goals, I mean, why wouldn't you pick them? Now, I think Eze is a really decent option if you want to be a bit different, right? He always looks bright whenever Palace play. He seems to be pretty much either the pass to the assist or the goal scorer of every single goal that Crystal Palace score. And that was there was no exception to that in game week 30. He had a really nice game week there. He should be on penalties and free kicks as well. I think there's a little bit of question to be asked as to who's on penalties when both him and Elise are on the pitch. But with Elise, I believe, still being injured, might be due back in 31. I think you can probably say that Eze is the penalty taker. And when he has been fit and playing, he's putting up some pretty decent numbers. 9 attacking returns from 16 starts. And of course, he's got a double game week in 34. And I think that Crystal Palace double game week against West Ham and Newcastle is really, really nice, particularly from an Eze perspective. Both teams, West Ham and Newcastle, not great defensively. I really like him as an option. And I'm not going to say he's completely fixture-proof, don't get me wrong, but I do feel like Crystal Palace still managed to show up in the tough fixtures. They've got a really good record against Man City. Don't think their record against Liverpool is as good. But I wouldn't rule out his ability to get attacking returns against both Man City and Liverpool. So if you wanted to be a little bit different, I don't mind him as an option. I think Ait-Nouri is actually one of my favourite defenders in the game at the moment. He looks to be nailed on in that Wolves team, and I think is by far and away their most attacking defenders. I'd say his run of 5 fixtures he's got coming up is really, really nice, and I wouldn't be afraid to start him in every single one of those game weeks, to be honest, if I picked him. He's got 4 attacking returns in his last 5 games in all competitions for Wolves. I don't think that form's going to continue, and it's not just in the Premier League, of course. They've played some cup games where he's done well. Not sure that form's going to continue, but I think it suggests that he's decent from an attacking perspective, right? And like I said, I think you can start him from every game week for the next 5. And, you know, double in 34, yes, he's got Arsenal involved, but he could get an attacking return in that game. And then it's Bournemouth, where he could conceivably keep a clean sheet and get an attacking return. And, I mean, ultimately, the way the game at the moment is going with goals, there aren't many defenders that are actually keeping clean sheets. So for me, the best defenders in FPL are the ones that get the most attacking returns, and I think Ait-Nouri is right up there in terms of attacking capability. And, you know, if I was on my wildcard or even just looking to make a transfer, you know, Gusto came off injured, Lascelles came off injured in game week 30, I'd personally wait for a bit more information before making a final decision on selling them. But if you were to, I think Ait-Nouri is the ideal replacement, particularly because he's got Burnley in game week 31 as well. So he's straight in with an absolute plum fixture. And yeah, he's a really nice option. I had to mention Gabriel because I've seen a few wildcard drafts of Game Week 30 wildcarders that haven't got him in their team, and even though he's got Man City in 30, I think whatever happens in Game Week 30, he is still the best defender in FPL. I say that, he's probably going to get injured against Man City now, but genuinely, I think he's probably the best defender in FPL right now. Now to start for Arsenal, obviously got the double in Game Week 34, but I mean, they could keep a couple of clean sheets against Wolves and Chelsea. I definitely believe they could. He's a good goal threat from set pieces. Arsenal in general are really good at taking and scoring from set pieces. So not only is Gabriel as an individual good at scoring from them, Arsenal as a team, I think, are I think statistically they're the best team in the league, basically, of scoring from set pieces. And they have the best defence in the league for expected goals conceded. So all of those things combined, I think this guy is the best defender in the game at the moment. And you know, if you're wildcarding in Game Week 31, absolutely no reason why you don't have him in your team. Next up, another Arsenal defender, and I think David Raya is a nice route to getting yourself double Arsenal defence if you're already on Gabriel. When you compare him to the other Arsenal defenders who are between 5.5 and 6 million, or at least the ones that you can back to start regularly, I'm thinking Ben White and Saliba. I think Raya allows you a slightly cheaper way of getting double Arsenal defence, and now he's got his Brentford fixture out of the way. He's going to play every game, in my opinion. He's clearly the Arsenal #1 in the Prem over Ramsdale now. And I think of all the goalkeepers in the game, he's probably the best. Just because I think Arsenal are going to keep the most clean sheets of any team in the league. I don't think they're going to keep many, but I still think they're going to keep the most. And I mean, ultimately, it's slim pickings in terms of goalkeepers, right? When you look at his double in 34 as well, all those fixtures combined, I think he could conceivably keep a clean sheet in all but the Tottenham game. I just really like him as an option. I think if you're looking for a keeper on your wild card and you have enough cash, I think David Raya is your man. Another goalkeeper I wanted to talk about, and again, it might apply to wildcarders. I wouldn't look too much into those expected points, although they have turned out to be pretty accurate of recent. I think Petrovic is a nice goalkeeper pick, right? He should be starting for Chelsea for the foreseeable, especially considering Sanchez is injured. They've got potentially a couple of double game weeks coming up in 37. No, it's 36 and 37. Chelsea could potentially have 2 consecutive double game weeks, or they could have a triple game week in 37. He's playing really well, I think. I don't think the goals they conceded against Burnley were particularly his fault. And he's also making a decent amount of saves as well. I would expect some clean sheets to come. I'd say he could conceivably keep one against Sheffield United and Everton. And also, Man United v Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, I'm pretty sure is the most nil-nilled fixture, most popular fixture to finish 0-0 in Premier League history, right? So yeah, I mean, you can't rule out a clean sheet in that one, in my opinion. He's definitely one to keep an eye on. And I think if I was on a wild card, the double up of Petrovic and Raya as the 2 keepers, I really like the thought of doing that. Now, this one might spark a bit of debate, considering Isak had an absolutely fantastic game week in Game Week 30. And I'm not going to deny that I think he's a wonderful player, right? 18 starts, 14 goals. You can't argue with that. 2 goals and an assist in Game Week 30. A really nice set of fixtures. I mean, Spurs there you consider a difficult fixture, but they're not very good defensively. So you would foresee Isak being able to score in that game. He's also on penalties when Wilson isn't on the pitch, and Wilson's out until May. So, I mean, he's going to be on penalties for the foreseeable. He just always performs when he steps out on the pitch for Newcastle. And Newcastle, despite their defensive issues, they never have any issues scoring goals. The one thing for me on Isak is I think he's as likely to get an injury as he is to score a 10-point haul in FPL. I genuinely think that's like has the same probability. Yeah. Just my thoughts on him. I like him as an option, but I would probably always prefer Solanke as an option just because of how many injuries Isak has had. This season, he spent over 50 days out with an injury. He had, I believe, a groin strain at the end of 2023, and at the beginning of this year, it reoccurred, and he spent a total of 50 days out with that groin strain. And last year, he had an injury that kept him out for, I think, over 100 days. So in 2 consecutive years, in 2 years, he's been out for 150 days. So basically half of the time he's been out with injury. Now, yes, on his day, he's fantastic. When he plays, he's great. But I don't like picking players in FPL that are, injury risks. And he is certainly one of them. He is definitely a glass man. If you remember my FPL, what I've learned from FPL video I made during the international break, one of the tips was not to pick players that get injured all the time. And I think Isak falls into that category. So yes, he did great in Game Week 30, but I think he's also just as likely to get injured again in Game Week 31. And finally, with both Gusto and Lascelles leaving the field in Game Week 30 with an injury, I think Richards has to be an option now in Game Week 31. If you're looking to sell Lascelles or you need someone to start in place of Gusto as well, I think Richards could well be your man. He's got a decent fixture against Bournemouth in 31. Then, of course, it does get a bit tough for him. But then he's got a double in 34 as well. And then Fulham in Game Week 35. He's, I think, definitely my favourite of the 3.9 million defenders that are actually playing at the moment. And with Palace playing a back five now, he seems to be absolutely nailed on. I think since Game Week 14 or 15, he's played every minute, played 90 minutes every week. And I think Crystal Palace do look a lot better under their new manager in their new formation. And yeah, with Lascelles being injured, I don't think there's any doubt that he's now the best 3.9 million defender. He scored a goal this season, so he's not absolutely, dead in terms of attacking returns. But, I mean, ultimately, you're just kind of hoping for appearance points and clean sheets, aren't you? But at 3.9 million, if you're on your wild card, for example, and just looking for that absolute bargain basement defender, I don't think you can look elsewhere. I think Richards is your man, particularly considering you might well want to start him in Game Week 34. All right, and that's the end of the video. That was definitely one of the longer ones in my buy and avoid series, just because so much has already happened in Game Week 30. And I think quite a lot of managers as well will be on their wild card in 31. So I tried to cover all bases with those player recommendations there. I'll hopefully have a video out either tomorrow or Monday with a wild card draft in it as well. So yeah, stick around for that. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments what you thought of some of my opinions I've shared about some of those players there. I always say, FPL is all about different opinions, right? If we all had the same opinion about players, we'd all have the same team and it'd be a boring game. So if you disagree with me, just please do it respectfully in the comments, all right? And yeah, you can subscribe to the Gone and Goal channel, which should be just there if you want to see more videos from me. And I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching.